Cold cases have a way of haunting entire communities, their unanswered questions echoing through the years. Some are marked by the sudden vanishing of a bright, hopeful life, others by horrifying truths buried for decades. Before we dive in, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe only if you truly enjoy exploring these stories with me. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is on your clock. It's always amazing to see our community connecting across the world. Now, settle in, dim the lights, and let's unravel tonight's haunting journey together. Case file number 1. Danielle Hutchins, born in 1981, was affectionately known as Danny by her mother, Cheryl Hutchins. To Cheryl, Danny wasn't just a daughter. She was the center of her world, the bright, unshakable bond that made every day meaningful. From the moment Danny could walk, she carried with her an infectious energy and an unbreakable connection to her mom. On the morning of September 21st, 1996, 15-year-old Danielle set out from her home in Belgrade, Montana. Her plan was simple. She was heading to Cameron Bridge Fishing Access, a familiar and beloved spot where she often sought quiet and solace. To Danny, it was meant to be a peaceful Saturday spent fishing, reflecting, and enjoying nature. But what should have been a tranquil afternoon would soon become the opening chapter of a harrowing mystery. When Danielle failed to return home later that day, her family's worry turned to panic. Searchers were quickly dispatched, and before long, her truck was located parked near the fishing site. It was unlocked, and nothing appeared out of place. No sign of a struggle, no immediate evidence to indicate foul play. But there was no Danielle. As daylight slipped away and urgency mounted, search efforts intensified. Then, as the hours crept by, the devastating truth emerged. Danielle's lifeless body was discovered face down in shallow water, not far from where her vehicle had been found. She had been brutally assaulted, and the nature of her final moments was heartbreaking. Investigators determined that her killer had forced her head down into the marshy ground, suffocating her until she choked on mud. Who could have carried out such a vicious and senseless attack? That haunting question lingered for nearly 28 years. The case grew cold, and as the seasons passed, justice for Danny seemed agonizingly out of reach. But her mother, her sister, and the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office refused to let her memory fade into obscurity. In 2019, investigators reopened the case. Driven by renewed hope and major advancements in forensic science, carefully preserved evidence from the crime scene was sent to a cutting-edge laboratory in California. Every fiber, every trace was meticulously analyzed, and Danielle's DNA profile was uploaded into the FBI's CODIS system. But once again, no matches were found. Refusing to give up, detectives turned to a newer, more powerful investigative tool: genetic genealogy. With a court order, they gained access to expansive consumer DNA databases, searching for familial matches that traditional systems could not provide. And finally, the breakthrough came. A match led investigators to Paul Hutchinson, a 55-year-old man living in Dillon, Montana. In July 2024, detectives approached Hutchinson at his home to question him about the decades-old crime. Tension crackled in the air during the encounter. Hutchinson's jittery, evasive responses and his agitated behavior raised red flags. He was clearly hiding something dark. Just hours after that interview, on August 9, 2024, Hutchinson took his own life, abruptly ending the possibility of a full confession. Despite his death, the investigation didn't end there. Forensic analysis soon confirmed what detectives had long suspected. Hutchinson's DNA was an undeniable match to the evidence collected from Danielle's case. After nearly 3 decades of questions and grief, the truth had finally surfaced. Paul Hutchinson had built a seemingly ordinary life. A husband of 24 years, a father of 2, a college-age daughter, and a younger son. He had worked for the Bureau of Land Management for 22 years. He was a graduate student at Montana State University at the time of Danny's murder and had only been in the area briefly when the crime occurred. For Danny's family, the news was both a relief and a bitter pill to swallow. Justice had arrived, but Hutchinson would never face trial, never answer for the terror he inflicted. Danny's younger sister, Stephanie Mullet, shared her thoughts with raw honesty. Even though this man will not face a jury of his peers, I have no doubt he was the one who forcefully and violently assaulted my sister. When the time came to be accountable for his actions, he chose to end his life. He knew his guilt. He could not face my family or his own family and the pain he caused. After nearly 28 years without answers, without justice, we celebrate today. But 28 years is far too long, and I had to fight far too hard to find justice for my 15-year-old sister. Her words carried an urgent plea. Danielle's story should anger you. It should make you think of your mothers, your sisters, your wives, and your daughters. It should make you consider everything you would do to protect and honor the women you love. The revelation also devastated Hutchinson's family. His wife Christy released a statement. "We are absolutely heartbroken to learn this news, and our hearts go out to the Hutchins family. It is good to know that they will at last be able to find the closure they deserve. Our own family was already reeling from dealing with Paul ending his own life. In 24 years of marriage, there was never any hint of something like this lurking in the background. Paul was an exceptional husband and father. This latest news makes our grieving so much more complicated. We would appreciate being given the space to process and come to terms with this development as we mourn." While Danielle's case has now been closed, investigators are delving deeper into Hutchinson's past, exploring possible links to other unsolved cases. Case file number 2. Melissa Patton was born on September 9, 1977, to Carl and Norma Patton. Growing up just outside Atlanta, Georgia, she shared an unshakable bond with her older sister, Tina. Melissa was the kind of person people gravitated toward: bubbly, kind-hearted, and full of trust. She radiated warmth, the sort of person who could brighten a room simply by stepping into it. Life seemed to fall into place for her. After high school, Melissa married her longtime boyfriend, Christopher Wolfen-Barger, and the couple soon built a family of their own. They were blessed with 2 children, Joey and Chrissy. To those who knew her, Melissa truly flourished in her role as a devoted wife and mother, pouring her heart into creating a nurturing home. But beneath the surface, not everything was as it seemed. The last confirmed contact Melissa had with her parents was a simple phone call on Thanksgiving Day, 1998. She was calling from Christopher's grandparents' home, and during the conversation, chatted about Christmas plans. Everything seemed normal, or at least that's what her family believed at the time. When Christmas came and went, with no sign of Melissa, and later when she missed her mother's birthday in February 1999, her family's unease turned to alarm. Norma Patton, gripped by an unshakable sense that something was wrong, decided to go to Melissa's home herself. What she discovered was deeply unsettling. Neighbors informed her that the Wolfen-Bargers had abruptly moved away shortly after Christmas. There had been no goodbye, no forwarding address, just a sudden and inexplicable disappearance. Even more disturbing was Christopher's silence. He had never reported Melissa missing. He hadn't even reached out to her family to explain her absence. To Norma, this silence screamed volumes. Christopher already had a documented history of domestic violence against Melissa. Now, his refusal to speak about her whereabouts only deepened the gnawing suspicion that something horrific had happened. On April the 29th, 1999, the grim truth began to surface. In a wooded area along Avon Avenue near Hartford Avenue in Atlanta, sanitation workers stumbled upon a garbage bag discarded in a dumpster. Inside was the severed and bleached head of a woman. The discovery was grotesque and chilling, sending shockwaves through the community. Just over a month later, on June 3rd, more remains were found. Additional body parts belonging to the same woman, packed into black trash bags and tossed into another dumpster. Her torso was never recovered. The state of the remains told investigators a disturbing story. The dismemberment had been carried out with a saw, the cuts clean and deliberate, pointing to someone methodical and unflinchingly brutal. The bleaching of the head suggested an attempt to destroy evidence, an erasure of identity. One detail immediately caught investigators' attention. The locations where Melissa's remains were found were alarmingly close to a glass company where Christopher Wolfenbarger had worked in the late 1990s. He had been fired after being suspected of stealing a reciprocating saw, a tool capable of the exact kind of dismemberment seen in Melissa's remains. As detectives dug deeper, the pieces began to click together in an unsettling pattern. Everything, the saw, the proximity of the dump sites, Christopher's violent history, and Melissa's sudden disappearance pointed directly to him. Yet without concrete forensic evidence, building a prosecutable case proved agonizingly difficult. The investigation dragged on for years, haunted by dead ends. Then, in 2003, a pivotal breakthrough emerged. Advancements in DNA technology allowed authorities to finally confirm that the dismembered remains belonged to Melissa Patton. A DNA sample taken from her father, Carl Patton, provided the match that investigators had been searching for. The identification brought Melissa's family some closure, but it also unearthed a deeply unsettling revelation. Carl Patton, Melissa's father, carried his own horrifying secret. DNA evidence linked him to a string of 5 murders committed across Georgia between 1973 and 1977, including 3 that were part of the infamous Flint River slayings. In March 2003, Carl pleaded guilty to 4 of the killings, adding a 5th plea 2 months later. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The shocking discovery initially led investigators to wonder, could Carl have been involved in his own daughter's brutal murder? But further investigation ruled him out. He had already been incarcerated well before Melissa vanished. For Norma and Tina, this revelation was a gut punch. Carl's murderous past was horrifying enough, but it wasn't connected to Melissa's death. The true perpetrator was still out there, and all evidence still pointed back to one person, Christopher Wolfenbarger. For years, law enforcement struggled to gather the irrefutable evidence they needed. Melissa's case lingered in limbo, her family left to battle grief and unanswered questions. Finally, in 2024, the tide turned. Determined to close the cold case once and for all, investigators revisited the evidence with new forensic tools and a relentless focus. The re-examination ultimately pointed decisively to Christopher Wolfenbarger as the man responsible for Melissa's horrific death. In August 2024, law enforcement moved in to make the arrest. When officers arrived at Christopher's Griffin, Georgia home, they found him desperately trying to evade capture, hiding behind a dryer. The bizarre and almost pitiful attempt only underscored the weight of the secrets he had carried for decades. Christopher was taken into custody without further incident. On August 6, 2024, he was formally charged with Melissa's murder. At a press conference, Detective Shepard, who had shepherded the case for years, stated, "Christopher Wolfenbarger has been a person of interest since the very beginning. Probable cause is what allowed us to finally make this arrest. I can't disclose all the evidence we uncovered. We need to protect the integrity of the case. But I can say we re-examined everything with fresh eyes. That's what finally brought us here today." For Melissa's family, the arrest was bittersweet. Norma Patton, her mother, fought back tears as she spoke. "We finally made it. He's in custody. Now we just need to get over the last hurdle and get him convicted. You never know what the final straw was that made him do this to her. He's the only one who really has the answers. My last words to my daughter were, 'I love you, and you know where I am if you need me.'" Tina, Melissa's sister, echoed the sentiment. "We knew it was Christopher from day one. There was never any doubt. My mom always said when she first met him, there was evil in his eyes. Melissa didn't deserve what she got, and I just hope anyone living through domestic violence hears our story and gets out before it's too late." Case file number 3. In 1987, a 19-year-old woman faced a life-altering moment. She became pregnant. Under different circumstances, it might have been a joyful milestone, a moment to embrace a future filled with hope. But for Melissa Jean Allen Avila, the details surrounding that pregnancy remain murky to this day. Who was the father? Was she in a relationship? Or were the circumstances more complex, even darker? Those questions have lingered unanswered for decades, cloaked in secrecy and silence. Then, in October 1987, a routine day in Riverside, California, turned into a chilling nightmare. A man scavenging for recyclables behind a business on the 5,400 block of La Sierra Avenue pulled open the lid of a dumpster and froze. Inside, amidst the refuse, lay the tiny, lifeless body of a newborn baby girl. Authorities were called immediately, and soon the Riverside County Coroner's Office confirmed the unthinkable. The infant's life had been deliberately taken. The baby's identity and that of her mother were a complete mystery. Detectives with the Riverside Police Department followed every lead, knocking on doors, interviewing potential witnesses, and combing through evidence. But the investigation went nowhere. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years, and eventually, the case slipped into the growing archive of cold cases unresolved, yet never forgotten. For more than 3 decades, the newborn girl remained nameless, her brief life erased before it had even begun. Then, in 2020, the Riverside Police Department's cold case unit made a pivotal decision. Determined to finally bring justice for the abandoned child, they partnered with the Riverside County Regional Cold Case Team and the nonprofit organization Season of Justice. This collaboration was fueled by a new hope that revolutionary advances in forensic DNA analysis might succeed where every other investigative avenue had failed. The preserved evidence was meticulously re-examined, and a full DNA profile of the baby's mother was built. Finally, after decades of dead ends, the results came in. The mother had been identified. Her name was Melissa Jean Allen Avila. With this critical lead, detectives turned their focus to finding Avila herself. Tracking her down, however, proved to be no small task. Over the years, she had moved multiple times, eventually settling more than 2,000 miles away in Shelby, North Carolina. On August 7, 2024, after years of painstaking work, authorities finally located and apprehended her. The arrest was the culmination of a coordinated effort between the U.S. Marshals Pacific Southwest Regional Fugitive Task Force and the Carolinas Regional Fugitive Task Force. Avila, now 55 years old, was extradited back to Riverside County, California, the place where, decades earlier, her infant daughter's life had been stolen. There, she was formally charged in connection with her newborn's death. Avila's bail was set at $1.1 million, underscoring the severity of the charges against her. The evidence that ultimately led to her identification and arrest was rooted in the power of modern forensic science, with DNA analysis serving as the linchpin in the prosecution's case. For detectives, the arrest marked a long-awaited moment of accountability. For the tiny victim, a child whose life was extinguished before it had truly begun, it was, at last, a measure of justice. Avila now awaits trial, where the court will hear the evidence linking her to the 1987 killing, and for a community that had carried the weight of an unanswered question for more than 3 decades, there is finally a sense that the truth has begun to emerge. Case file number 4. Wayne Pratt was just 24 years old in 1963, a kind-hearted man known for his quiet demeanor and unwavering dedication to his loved ones. He worked as an operator at the Enco gas station along U.S. Highway 41 in Winnebago, Wisconsin, about 60 miles southwest of Green Bay. To his wife, Marie Pratt, Wayne wasn't just a husband. He was her partner, her confidant, and the steady heart of her world. June 12, 1963 began like any other day. Wayne completed his shift and returned home for dinner, relaxing with Marie and watching television. As the evening unfolded, neither of them had any reason to believe that their lives were about to be torn apart. Around 8:40 p.m., the sound of a car pulling up to the gas station broke the quiet of their home. Ever dutiful, Wayne stood, kissed Marie goodbye, and walked over to assist what he assumed was a late-night customer. But Wayne never came back. As the minutes turned into hours, Marie's unease deepened. She tried to convince herself that Wayne was simply tied up at work, but the growing pit in her stomach told her something was terribly wrong. Finally, unable to endure the agonizing wait any longer, she got into her car and drove to the station herself. What she found would shatter her world. The gas station was eerily still. No customers, no activity, just an unnatural quiet that set her nerves on edge. Inside, Marie discovered her husband lying lifeless in the back room, his body concealed beneath a blanket. Panic surged through her as she rushed to call the police. Investigators soon arrived, and as they carefully examined the scene, the horror of what had transpired came into sharp focus. Wayne Pratt had been viciously stabbed 53 times. Even hardened detectives were left shaken by the sheer brutality of the attack. The ferocity of the stabbing indicated a deep personal rage, yet Wayne had no known enemies. Among the chaos, investigators found one glimmer of hope: blood at the crime scene that didn't belong to Wayne. This discovery suggested that his attacker had injured themselves during the frenzied assault, leaving behind a crucial piece of evidence, one that might one day reveal their identity. Despite this promising lead, the investigation quickly hit a wall. Witnesses were scarce, motives unclear, and the available forensic technology was simply not advanced enough to make sense of the evidence. Weeks turned into months, then years. Wayne's case slipped from the headlines, eventually becoming another unresolved entry in the county's cold case files. Decades passed. Then, in 2011, nearly half a century after Wayne's brutal death, the case was reopened. Advances in forensic science offered new hope. and investigators focused on the blanket that had been draped over Wayne's body, searching for any trace of the killer's DNA. By 2015, forensic experts at Sorensen Forensics made a promising discovery. DNA mixtures were present on the blanket, but the samples were complex, preventing them from being uploaded into national databases like CODIS for comparison. The investigation stalled yet again. 3 years later, in 2018, detectives finally got the breakthrough they had been chasing. New warrants were issued, and a familiar name resurfaced. William Bill Dotter, an 82-year-old man from Bowler, Wisconsin. Dotter had long been on investigators' radar. He had been named a suspect in the days immediately following Wayne's murder in 1963. His name cropped up again in 1968 and as late as 2022, each time hinting at his potential involvement. But without hard evidence, law enforcement could never close in. Everything changed in 2023. Sorensen Forensics reanalyzed the evidence using the latest DNA technology, while cybergenetics applied their powerful true allele data analysis to untangle the complex mixtures. On July 16, 2024, the results were undeniable. The DNA found on the blanket that covered Wayne's body was statistically identical to that of William Dotter. After 61 long years, the identity of Wayne Pratt's killer had finally been unmasked. Yet this revelation was bittersweet. Dotter had died in 2022, at the age of 82, robbing Wayne's loved ones of the chance to see justice carried out in a courtroom. The Winnebago County Sheriff's Office officially closed the cold case. The district attorney's review confirmed that, had Dotter been alive, there would have been ample evidence to charge him with Wayne's murder. For Marie Pratt and the community of Winnebago, the closure brought a complicated mix of emotions. Relief that the mystery had finally been solved, but sorrow that justice had come too late. Even so, Wayne's memory endures. His story a haunting reminder of the decades-long pursuit of truth and the power of perseverance in the face of unimaginable loss. That concludes today's video. I truly hope this gave you valuable insight into some of the most overlooked cases throughout the years. If you found this helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications to stay updated. If you're not sure what to comment, just drop a 555. It lets me know you watched till the end. Thanks again for your time and support. There's more on the way, so stay tuned.